even in just watching that preview, I'm not ready for an NFL world where I don't get those sound bites from Aaron Rodgers. I'm not most people. One after the other, after the other. What is the future? What was the past? What was the journey? Well, my next guest probably has some of those answers. A filmmaker, a media mogul, author. Is that a baseball bat? What was that? He's the co-founder of the Emmy Award-winning. We can talk baseball too. Religion of Sports covers it all. You, my friend, were the executive producer of the Netflix docuseries Aaron Rodgers Enigma. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to see you.
Big fan of yours as well. So I'm happy to be here.
You've worked with the best. It is truly an honor to share some space with you and get your thoughts this morning. The Tom Brady's, Simone Biles, Serena Williams, everyone in between. I would love to just ask you about your process. How do you land on who you want to partner with, who you want to cover? How does that work?
Great question. I love storytelling and I love sports. Both of them are driven by personalities and great characters. So I think I'm always on the hunt. I mean, greatness, obviously, people who have been, great at what they do. Sports is mythic in that sense. Sports is cinematic, of course. You can see it when people are performing at the highest level. So I think it lends itself, to cinema and to great storytelling. But, it's character driven, complicated characters, interesting characters, generally I find towards the end of their careers, athletes who have perspective. But then we're also just looking for the same things that make stories work: tension, conflict, challenges, adversity. It's great storytelling. I hate to use the word formula, but the formula is Joseph Campbell, Hero of a Thousand Faces. You're always looking for complicated, great characters.
And you certainly found one in Aaron Rodgers. Now, with all these greats, there's the connective tissue. They all sort of subscribe to the same thing. They're made of the same thing. Qualities, part of their character, their drive, all of that, their stories. What is something that Aaron has that sets him apart? What is unique to Aaron Rodgers?
I mean, Aaron is pretty aloof. He's defiant. Yeah, he has a lot of the same core qualities that drive great characters, great athletes. There's a lot of self-belief, of course. One of the things I really love, especially when I started working with him, it's the title of the series, is enigmatic. He wasn't constantly, out there. He hadn't talked very much. He wasn't, a lot on social media. There was scarcity around him. People had strong opinions, of course, because he'd been around for a long time playing, and, by virtue of that, you're interacting with the media, et cetera. But he hadn't really told his story in a sort of definitive way. And so that scarcity really drives interest. And I think even from a filmmaking standpoint, from a storytelling standpoint, there's a lot of room to explore. So I think that definitely differentiated in a world where pretty much everybody has huge social followings and kind of almost lets it all out. Aaron had that mystery to him. And I thought that was pretty unique and pretty compelling.
In Enigma, through the process, it's been a few months now since the release, did he prove your ideas of him correct? Did we demystify him through Enigma? What did you learn about Aaron, who everyone thinks they have figured out, but do they?
I don't think I figured him out. And I've spent a lot of time with him, including going down to Costa Rica, going on ayahuasca trips and stuff like that. It's all in the doc. And, being with him a lot during his rehab, in these very quiet moments, especially in the early stages of coming back from his Achilles injury, it was oftentimes just the two of us. And really talking about a lot of stuff beyond football. So I feel like I got to know him. And yet, if you asked me now, do I fully understand him? Absolutely not. Like I said before, he's aloof. He's very thoughtful. He's smart. He's all of those things. But he also, I think, keeps a lot of people, myself included, at arm's length. And I think that's part of his personality, part of his upbringing, part of his experience, getting to know people. So I feel like I probably know him better than most, but I wouldn't say I know him. He and I, if you ask me, and I'm sure you're going to ask me, what do I think about the future? I have opinions, but it's not particularly informed by anything he's told me. We're not, intimate in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that you could be more intimate than ayahuasca, watching somebody do that, having him be so open about that. It's clearly important for him to have people understand that. And you're talking about the way he was brought up. Everyone should watch Enigma. I mean, you get the pieces of that. You get the pieces about his family, at least what he's comfortable sharing. It is, we don't see that anywhere else. So if you haven't seen it, please go stream it, and it helps you sort of put together the enigma, the puzzle that is Aaron Rodgers, and then you can form your own opinions. When it comes to the unique filmmaking parts of this, I imagine, the Costa Rica going there and saying, all right, let's do this thing was interesting to you. And I'm sure you researched everything there is to know about ayahuasca. Is there anything that stuck out to you about that part of this?
Well, I think what first is Aaron's openness and willingness to talk about that, to share that experience. That was unique. And I think, again, going back to your first question, like what makes him unique is like, a lot of athletes and a lot of people of certain stature or fame, there's a lot of barriers to getting to know them, and there's physical barriers. There's publicists and agents and managers and lawyers and stuff like that. And this sort of enigma or maybe irony of Aaron, who is so aloof and who he's none of those things. Like once you're in, or once he was committed to this project, he was so accessible. It was him and I and this creative team we built, my co-director, et cetera, were directly interacting with him. He was the one who set up that whole ayahuasca thing, invited us, told us where to be and all of that. So there was just like an openness and a willingness to share some of that. Look, what's interesting about the ayahuasca too is like, I did some research, but like, there's no resource in the world that is more informed about ayahuasca plant medicine than Aaron Rodgers. And I think that's like one of the quote misunderstandings. People just dismiss him as like, oh, this, freak and like this strange guy. And no, he's like really, he's the most informed person I've ever met on plant medicine, on ayahuasca. And this is a tradition that goes back. This is not some just, new age thing. This is a tradition that goes back thousands of years in some cases. And Aaron was incredibly informed. It's one of the things you kind of see in the doc. There's some other players who are involved in, because he's become the go-to person. I think a lot of people have been turned on to ayahuasca and psychedelics, recently because of trends. Aaron's been doing it for a long time. He's incredibly knowledgeable. He knows where to go. He knows how to do it safely. So a lot of people trust him. And that was something that I sort of feel like I discovered along the way.
How close were you to letting him convince you to do it? Because that's the other thing about him, is he doesn't want to just tell you about it. He wants you to do it with him. He wants everyone in his orbit to experience ayahuasca, a darkness retreat, the things that have helped him on his path to self-actualization or self-discovery that he seems to be on. How close did he get? How many times did he ask you to do it?
Well, I think part of why he and I worked on this together is I have been exposed. I haven't done ayahuasca.
Okay, got it.
But the darkness retreats, the meditation, all that stuff, it's been a part of my life for a long time. So that was like an area that we could, talk about and relate to. On the ayahuasca, of course, he's sort of, it's been a big part of his life. It's really opened him up to a lot of his own self-awareness, et cetera. So I think he's a big advocate of it. But I think he's also, you do it when you're ready. He's one of those, he understands. And, you do it when the time is right for you. Certainly it was not right for me to be doing it in that setting where we were trying to, be professional and stuff like that. I will tell you, if and when I'm ready and I haven't felt the calling yet to do it, he would be the guy I would go to. I was like, wherever this Four Seasons version of ayahuasca is the way I would do it. He knows his way around that tradition, and I'm sure, I know he's talked to you about it. Yeah. He's the guy. He's the guy.
There's a lot of beauty in it. I'm intrigued for sure. Let me ask you this. In being the outside sort of, you're archiving this as it's happening in real time, and it's something that's so meaningful to him, and you want to get it right and all of that. I have to ask you, pre-ayahuasca and post-ayahuasca, is there a difference in Aaron Rodgers that you noticed? This is the pragmatic part of me. Like, what's the change? What's the difference?
Yeah, I think first of all, again, he's done it. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's many times, right? Like over a dozen, if I recall correctly. So I think there is a process, right? It's the same thing, and well, I want to be careful about because it's unique, but like all these things he does that are resets, the darkness retreat, the meditation retreats, the yoga retreats, the ayahuasca, the goal of them is to remove yourself from the noise of the world, all the many distractions. And, we're all constantly on our phones. When you're someone like Aaron Rodgers, everyone every day is speculating about you, et cetera. And the goal of all of these processes is to just remove yourself. And so you definitely see after that, I think like in this experience, he did the retreat and then almost immediately he was back, and within 24 hours had to be at some charity event, and there were tons of media and people are speculating about, the upcoming season and all of that stuff, where he was in his rehab, et cetera. And you could see that immersion back into the world, but also like just a sense of self. Like what I think most of these exercises do is they remind you of who you are. They enable you to sort of go inward and sort of reflect on what's important to you at that point in your life. And it's the reason why you do them over and over again, because gradually you get sucked back into the world and you do kind of hear all the noise and you get reactive to the noise. And I think what these things do is they reset you. And I saw that with Aaron. And I think it's why he does it pretty much every off season. From what I can tell, he goes through and he channels these different experiences again.
You had this unique lens into his life, and I thank you for bringing it to us. And you can, of course, stream Enigma on Netflix, as a lot of us have already. But he's making these decisions in his life that I'm sure he's enjoying a reset. And we will talk about the future in a little bit here. But it's filmed, it gets put together, edited. You get it to Netflix. All this is happening, and then you're watching the season play out. And then he's in the headlines for all these things. And you do have, you carry with you this unique experience of getting a little bit closer to him than all of us had. Knowing him a little in that unique way, what is the biggest misconception about Aaron as you're seeing all the comments about him and what the commentary is, the critiques, the compliments? What's the biggest misconception in your opinion?
I mean, that he doesn't care, that he just, that he's so aloof that it doesn't bother him, that he's not paying attention, that he doesn't have good relationships with his teammates. I mean, I was around him, especially the season that he didn't play. He has great relationships. And all the people we talked to, especially going back to the Green Bay days, et cetera, there was deep affection for him. And so I think just this idea that he's so aloof that he doesn't care, I think is a misconception. I mean, he cares, and he's obviously super competitive. And I think last season, he had ambitions and goals. He worked really hard physically, mentally, emotionally, et cetera, to come back from a pretty dark injury. When you get hurt at 39 years old, that type of injury, and you commit to coming back and you work so hard, and then it doesn't go well. And look, it was a confluence of events that led to that. I think it was really difficult. And I don't know, people just sort of assume certain things and don't know how much, I think it pained him to go through that experience. And look, some of that's him. Some of that is, he's outspoken. He is sort of defiant, and he's reactive to all of that. But, so I just think this, and I think that's in general, the way we sort of observe things now. And, we all have access to sort of talk about it. I think there's an energy around that can be difficult, even for people who are used to it, who have been doing it for a long time.
As you're watching the season not go according to plan, were you surprised by how it turned out and some of the commentary about it?
I guess not surprised. Look, I'm not a journalist in that sense. I don't come in to do an objective, I think that's one of the misconceptions about what we do. filmmakers or storytellers. Like you said, the process is you capture all this stuff, then you sit in an edit room, you make choices, and you decide in many ways with the subject, what are you willing to share with the world? What is the story you want to tell? This is not like a reality show that's quickly turned around and put out there on social media. So I think, yeah, I was surprised because, you spend so much time, you see how much work he puts into it physically and otherwise to get back on the field. And then you sort of convince yourself like, well, it's going to go. And, you have a body of work also in his case. Like he's been one of the greatest of all time. He does this really well. And so I think I expected, despite the fact that I'm a Patriots fan and historically have understood the misery of the Jets, I sort of felt like, oh, like this is going to work, And then it didn't. And it is kind of shocking, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And there's 31 other teams that are really trying hard also. So I get it. That objectivity returns and you're like, oh yeah, I can see why maybe this isn't working. But then, week after week and just like all the other stuff that happens. And, there's a reason they call these things unscripted. They just, it's sports and you can never really predict the outcome. And so, yeah, but it was pretty shocking to watch it, and come apart.
Yeah, and now we'll talk about, the future. You mentioned the Patriots. Like he wants, I'm assuming he wants the Tom Brady Cinderella. He wants Peyton Manning Cinderella. It's important to him. His mortality is well documented. He's talked about it. It's his legacy is something that he considers, and so much of Enigma. And why I think it's so beautiful, it's about this journey of him trying to find peace, from me as a fan watching. That's what he's trying to find answers. He's trying to figure it out. And not everybody is vulnerable enough to share that. And people don't even try to better themselves. And that's what I love about Aaron. In his NFL journey, for it to end at peace, what needs to happen?
Well, Kay, I think it goes back to one of your earlier questions, like what makes Aaron unique. And I say this with a lot of respect to the people I've worked with in the past, who are so devoted and committed and all about football or tennis or, whatever sport, fighting. I've worked with a lot of great people. One of the things that's unique about Aaron is he has a big life. He has stuff outside of football. He's of course super competitive, super committed. He wants to be great. He wants to win every game that he's in. He wants to win Super Bowls and all of that. But he's also got a lot of areas of interest outside of his life. You see it in the doc. For anybody who's a fan or watched Aaron has seen that, like in the ayahuasca, is an example of that. Like he's deeply, deeply into plant medicine and just the science and spirituality around it. I think he has a big life outside and he has a big future outside of the sport. Obviously, he wants to keep playing and he wants to have success and he wants that Cinderella story, though, you mentioned Tom. Tom didn't have a Cinderella story at the end. And I'm like the sort of chief curator of the Tom Brady story, but and you story tell, but the last season wasn't what Tom wanted it to be. And so I think these things have a way of, telling themselves. And so I hope for Aaron's sake, because I know how important it is to him, and he certainly didn't, I don't think, want to go out that way with the Jets, the way that last season ended. So my sense is he still wants to play in the right situation. And I hope he does, and I hope he has success. I mean, of course, it would be a dream for him to go to the playoffs and have success and go to the Super Bowl, but that's really hard. And there's a lot of other, factors that kick into that. But I hope he finds that peace. I remember when we were doing Enigma and we were trying to figure out, even for us, what was the ending going to be? And I felt like the ending was him getting back onto the field, because really that story started with the Achilles injury, and that was the catalyst and the comeback. And it was him just getting on the field, completing a pass, finding the joy in that. Whether or not they won that game, which they didn't, the opening game, the 49ers, whether or not they went to the playoffs and all that was sort of irrelevant. The resolution to the story in that case was getting back on the field, the joy of that, completing a pass, being with his teammates, all of which he made very clear were the things that were most important to him. Winning is great, but I think for Aaron in particular, just like that, it's sort of spiritual. That experience of being with his teammates, being on the field, was the most important to him.
And that's where religion of sports lives. Sports, science, spirituality, and it ends in an enigma still for Aaron Rodgers. We don't quite have the answer. We'll root him on, of course, on his journey of self-discovery. What is next for you, Gotham? What is the next project you're working on before we let you go?
Man, we always have a lot of stuff going on, and like I said earlier, like I think sports is mythic. I'm a huge fan, of course, in general. Like, and I have my favorite teams, and the Patriots being one of them. I have high hopes for them. Drake and
Love Drake.
will be back. Yeah, no, I'm very excited about the potential, but I'm taking the long game, playing the long game on that one, the long view. But what am I working on? I'm working on a very exciting thing that's close to my heart about the Red Sox right now, and really about Boston, I would say, more broadly, and just New England, and just, what teams mean to places. But, I have a new thing. I've been working with Steph Curry again on another project, so we're really excited about that. And we just always have a lot going on. So, I love storytelling. I love sports. So I'm very fortunate to be doing what I'm doing.
And we're so lucky that you love those things, because we are the benefactors. We get to benefit from all of that. I'll ask you this: you like. Not that you like, but there's stories to tell towards the end, and there's experience and perspective and all of that. If you could strap a GoPro to somebody's head right now, if you could, early on, let's get in early with footage and all those things, and you get to track somebody as they go, a young cat, if you will. Who's interesting to you? That's in the beginning steps of their journey and across all sports. Tough question.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, look, there's some incredible. Coco Gauff is amazing, and just early stages. I've had the incredible fortune of working with Serena Williams. And again, looking back at, 20 plus years of success and all of that, Coco, her trajectory, early on is looking like that. And so, everybody wants to, I'm in this business. Everybody talks about doing their last dance. And, you have to, you have to be able to achieve that. You have to be great and legendary like Michael was, but you also have to have had somebody filming along the way. And so, I think Coco's a sort of really interesting place. I'd like to say, but this is my personal bias, Drake May, is early in his career. Look, I think, one of the worlds that really intrigues me is the world of soccer, or football, international football. And someone like Jude Bellingham is really interesting, just because, soccer is one of those sports that's so much bigger than the game. Just when you look around the world, soccer speaks to equal pay, geopolitics, race, et cetera. And that's like one of the things. I see sports as a language. Sports is a way that we understand everything that's going on around us. And so when I look to the world of soccer, I see someone like Jude Bellingham, which is, where he comes from, what he represents, where he's playing right now. That's really interesting. And he's just a huge star, and I think got a long road ahead of him. So
love that. I'm going to keep tabs on that and bring it back for my docuseries on Gotham Chopra, coming to a Netflix near you. We appreciate it so much. Everybody, please go check out Enigma if you haven't already in Gotham. We are just so grateful to have time with you. Thank you.
Thank you.